friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we will be doing a tutorial on how you can make winding roads to elevate your creative builds in Dreamlight Valley. I promised you all that I would provide a tutorial in my Winnie the Pooh walkthrough, and so here it is. And we will be certainly using this method going forward in many of my future builds, so I hope that you guys can take something from this and learn to apply it to your own valleys. I really experimented with this because before, in most of my previous builds, I was sort of just winging it, and I would kind of eyeball it to try and create a winding path, but to make things easier for you guys, I'm not going to tell you to just wing it, and therefore I created this formula which I hope will be easy to follow for the beginners, and then I will show you a more advanced way to elevate these paths. So before we jump in, we want to ask the question, why winding paths? And the answer is simple. A winding path can add a little more depth to a build where it calls for it, and it can bring a certain aesthetic to life. They're really good for a more whimsical cottagecore, fairycore, and foresty kind of builds, as opposed to the more structured city builds, and this is no shade to using a straight line path, as that can also go a long way. But if you're down to try something new and to elevate your valley further, then definitely keep watching. So we're going to start with the beginner level of our winding path tutorial, and we're going to be using lovely Merida's house over here as like a little example, and we're going to start with our path choices, and this kind of matters. So in my personal opinion, I don't think you should use any of the paths that have a border in it because it kind of looks weird. The border just has that weird like squiggly kind of border when you try to do this method, and it just looks a little silly in my opinion, but you're of course welcome to use whatever you like. And my go-to paths for this kind of winding road pattern would be something like Ancient's Road, and something like the Natural Rock Path, or the Brick Road, or this like leaf-strewn path. And for this purpose today, I'm going to be using the Brick Road because I honestly like this one and I have the most of that one. So here we go. So to start with our path, for our beginner winding road, what we're going to do is all we're doing is creating a seamless point A to point B path. It goes from one place to another in a straight line. It's not a straight line in terms of it being windy, but it is a straight like direction. And so just to start, for this formula, there's a very specific number of like width and everything, and so I'm going to show you guys that this is going to be 4 spaces wide for our path. I thought this was just the perfect number because it's not too wide and it's not too small. So it's just perfect, you know, like Goldilocks would say. So I'm gonna put this down and we're gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is going to be the width of your path. And you can make it as long as you like. It's basically up to you. It depends on how big your build is going to be, and I'm just for the purpose I'm going to make it pretty long just to show you guys the effect of this path. Now we're going to start the actual windiness of it. So what we're going to do is from the very start, you're not going to want to start it too early but also not too late. And so my sweet spot as a rule of thumb is to have a 2-space margin before starting your winding path. And the thing is, if you start too late, then what it's going to look like, it's going to look like really straight, and then all of a sudden it like goes windy. So I think it looks more natural if the path immediately starts to wind. I think it looks more seamless like that. And so we're going to count 1, 2, 3, and then this is where we're going to start. Now for the actual terminology of what we're going to be using, anytime a path goes like this in a curve, that's going to be called our peaks, and as we are adding peaks, we are also subtracting path for our valleys. And so you're going to hear me say those 2 words a lot. We're going to have our peaks and our valleys. And so for our peak, what we're going to do is, I found for this formula, we're going to do it 7 spaces wide. And you can definitely do it a bit wider. The thing is, if you do it wider, the windiness will be less. So the shorter it is, the more windy your road is. Whatever number you do, if you're doing it long or short, it has to be an odd number. Like, it cannot be even. So we're gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the reason why we do odd numbers is because we have 3 on one side, 3 on the other, and then now we have a centerpiece. And so you're gonna find that center, and then you're gonna go down and you're gonna delete that. So what we have here is we have the beginning of our peak, and then we also have the beginning of our valley. And what we're going to do is we're going to repeat this on the other side and then the other side. And the way you find out where the starting point for that is basically wherever this peak ends, right next to it, you're going to basically go across. And then that is where you start your new peak. So now that you have this, this is what it's looking like. It looks a little bit rough. It's a concept of a winding path, but it's not quite there yet. And so what you're gonna do is now we're gonna start into our actual formula of making this a winding path. So think of it like you're playing with blocks and you're building a pyramid, kind of like Jenga almost, but not really. So pretend that this is a block, right? In order to increase our valleys and to make it more of a curve, you're gonna basically build a pyramid. And so we start with 1 block, and now we're gonna basically put 1 block on the top, 1 block on the top, and then 3 blocks in the bottom. And it starts to create like our valley over here, but you're gonna do the same thing on the top. So remember how this is 7 spaces long? You're gonna now go the next step up, which is 5. Like so. And let me just go ahead and repeat this on every side. Okay, so now that I've completed it, this is what it's looking like. And now we're starting to kind of see this winding path. You can definitely see it, and this is definitely a good place to stop if you want to, but we're gonna elevate this even further. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same process. We're gonna make a pyramid, and so we're gonna have 1 block on here. Now we're gonna make this layer have 3, and then we're gonna take these 2 corners out. So now it looks like it's a 1, 3, 5 pyramid. And here's what I meant when I said that you can kind of get away with making a thinner path. So if you want a thinner path, this would be 3 spaces wide, then all you have to do is just keep taking away the valleys. You don't have to touch the peaks at all for this part if you don't want a thick path. However, if you want to keep it consistent and if you want to keep a 4 space long path, then what you're going to do is you're not going to add 3 blocks here to create this pyramid, as you might think you would, because that's what we've been doing this whole time. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this and we're just going to step up 1 step. So we have 5 here, and we're just going to increase it by 1. And I'm just going to elevate everything by 1 space, just like that, 3 times. And I'm going to do this on every side. This is our final result. So this is basically the limit. If you try to do any more, if you try to do like 1, 3, 5, 7, that's where it kind of starts to break apart a little bit, because the path is just not thick enough for that. So this is a good sweet spot to be at. And yeah, it looks like we're getting away with kind of creating curves with such blocky textures, and this is what we want. And so you could have honestly just kept going all the way to the end right here, but we're gonna just keep like that. And there you have your beginner tutorial on how to make a winding path. Now this is for the more intermediate tutorial. Now this is for if you don't want, say, a path going from point A to point B. So let's just say maybe you want your path to diverge into a completely random direction, right? So let's say we have like maybe Daisy's house is over here, right? And you want to have a path that goes like this, leading up to her. So basically what we're going to create right now is a fork path, and it's just going to fork away from this main path over here. And so something to keep in mind is when you're making diverging paths, you're never going to want to add the path from one of these diagonal spots here. It's just going to look weird. And so the best bet is to build upon the diverging path from any of these flat ones. So these 3 right here are eligible for a diverting path. So for this purpose, I am going to start a new path from here. And basically what I'm going to do is, because this is 5 blocks long, if you remember, our path is 4 blocks wide. And so I'm only going to use about 4 of these. And so I'm going to start creating a new straight path, and it's going to be going this way. After you have that, we're going to follow our earlier principle of having a 2 space gap. So 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to basically start our formation again, where we do our step pyramids. So, as you can see here, what we have is now a diverging path. This adds a lot more dimension to the build. It's no longer this flat, like point A to point B. Now you've introduced C into the picture, okay? And so you can keep it like this, and then you could probably just add it straight onto here. So let's say I want Daisy's house to sit like right over here or something like that. You're going to do the same process. We have a little flat area over here. And so now what we have is a perfect little segue into creating another winding path going straight to her house. And one thing to keep in mind for sure is that when you are diverting a path, you're going to want to look overhead and see where you want your peaks and curves to be. Now, this is going to be completely up to you because it's your build and you probably have a better idea as to how you want your paths to look. And so I personally think it would look nice if this path kind of went back into a loop like this. And so we're gonna have my peak go over here and my valley over here, but you can definitely switch it up. I'm gonna complete this path using what we just learned, and I'll see you back. Okay, so now we have our path, and you know how I said how I wanted something to kind of go into this direction leading up to Daisy's house. So we did that, and now we've got this really windy looking path, and this is where I'm gonna talk about eyeballing it, because let's just say that you wanted a path like this, but you don't want this part, right? So you're gonna have to trim that out, and I just delete it basically, and if it looks good, then it looks good. Personally, I think I deleted too much, so I'm gonna try my best to just kind of carve it. It's kind of like a sculptor being presented with a block of marble, and you know how they just kind of chip at it until it's like a statue. It's like the same concept there. I kind of just pick and add based on what it looks like. And so yeah, now you've got a more complex path, and the best part is that you can just keep adding on to it. So now we've got a couple more directions that we want to go. I can definitely add one right here leading somewhere, and I think that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So let's do that. And here, of course, I'm gonna add another path because why not? Okay, so there we have it. And yeah, this is a more intermediate way of making the winding paths, and I'm going to show you just how it looks in the first person point of view. So basically at eye level, it actually looks pretty good. Things are always going to look a little bit more rough and edgy in the aerial view, but I think it actually looks pretty good once you're walking around in it. This is definitely my new favorite way of making paths in all of my builds, and it just kind of creates that whimsical vibe that I don't think a straight path can do for things like forests and things like that. I do want to kind of mention before I end this video some pros and cons to this method. So if you are somebody who likes to create a path and then put your houses down, this is the perfect tutorial for you. Now, I know there are builders though who they have a very specific placement for their houses. Like, let's say they wanted Minnie's house to like be like this, right? Well, I think it's still doable, this method, but I do think that if you are someone who puts down your buildings before doing the pathing, all you have to do is just think a little bit harder about how you're going to lay your paths down and kind of think more consciously of where your peaks and valleys are going to be. Like if you know Minnie's house is going to be right here, then you know probably not to do a peak over here. You probably know to do it down here so that it kind of just segues into this area. And so I think it's possible both ways. However, just a little warning, this might be a con to people who prefer to have their buildings placed first and then their paths. It's definitely doable. You just have to think a little bit harder, but I believe in you guys. So yeah. If you are bothered by all of these rough edges here, don't worry. There are definitely ways to hide the roughness of it, and I'll probably make another video later on in my new series, Decorating Tips and Tricks. This is the first video about it, so I'm very excited. And so let me know down in the comments what you guys would like to see in terms of decorating, or in terms of like, I guess if you want to know how I decorate or what my thought processes are, definitely leave a comment down below and let me know what you want to see. If you guys enjoyed the video, definitely feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!